Demon engines march across the battlefield on mighty piston-driven limbs. Jutting from their armoured torsos are gargoyle-muzzled cannons and heavy weapon arms that end in murderous tools of war. To compare a demon engine to an ordinary vehicle is folly, for each of these beasts possesses its own malevolent sentience, rather than a crew. Bound within the battle-scarred metal of each demon engine is the essence of a raging warp entity, imprisoned in a physically indomitable body in order to better serve the Chaos Space Marines in their long and fierce war. The Imperium has little concept of how these affronts to sanity came into being. Fragments of ancient texts and post-action pict captures have allowed Imperial strategos to gather that they are creatures of demonic nature, but little else. Even amongst the ranks of the Chaos Space Marines, there are few who understand how these immortal beasts are created. With the correct rituals, a devout Chaos Sorcerer or Dark Apostle can coax a demon to possess the body of a mortal man, but only the Brotherhood of the Warpsmiths can bind an unwilling demon into a machine. Unlike the rituals of possession, the process of creating a demon engine is not one of mutual assent. Using corrupt rituals and forbidden alchemy, adepts of the dark arts can force immaterial spirits into a physical shell of the materium. It is the Warpsmiths that bring hell-forged demon engines into being, from forge-fiend gun beasts to new chaos titans. Beyond the soul forges of the immaterium, warp entities are bound in nooses of rope, woven from the hair of murderers, or with chains fashioned of scrimshawed bone. These captive demons are dragged biting and screaming into the flame-hearted citadels of the dark mechanicum, where, in the molten heat of the dark forges, the Warpsmiths trap the screaming demons within the rune-bound hulls of the giant metallic beasts they have captured or created. The screaming and newly created machine fiends must then be bludgeoned into submission until the time of battle is at hand. Caging a hate-filled demon in a physical form that can smash through a fortress wall is a hazardous business. Dozens of machine thralls and many more dark adepts are lost with the creation of each demon engine, for they do not fear death or pain, but delight in bringing it to their enemies in as vicious a fashion as possible. A demon engine is a nightmarish construct of the real and the unreal, a malevolent spawn of the warp, locked within a machine made of metal, driven by both the spirit of the warp and the mechanisms within. Driven to madness against its will, the immortal consciousness inside a demon engine makes such war machinery difficult to control. Engulfed in a state of unceasing, mind-shattering rage, it often breaks free and goes on a rampage on the battlefield, killing indiscriminately and turning its most devastating weapons against both friends and foes. Khorne, in particular, adores such deadly machines, but all the Chaos gods make use of them. These machines vary in size, from blood thrones to monstrous Lord of Skulls. However, there are even more gigantic machines, for example, the legionary engines, colossal conglomerations that imprison whole legions of demons. In comparison, even the titans of the Warpsmiths of Chaos appear as dwarfs. Yet, the giants, with their world-destroying power, require so much warp energy that they are extremely rare outside the Immaterium. However, with the vast warp storms that have erupted following the opening of the Great Rift, the appearance of this abomination in real space is only a matter of time. Among all the weapons of chaos, few are as destructive and terrifying as the fearsome demonic engines. They are a blend of the might of a war machine and the fury of the demon trapped within it. Beasts of steel and the frenzy of hell, striving to destroy everything in their path. Only the most powerful sorcerers can bind them to the will of a Chaos Lord. Although they are dangerous even for their masters, the greatest or most arrogant dark magi diabolists seek a way to unite such nightmarish entities into a single coven, whose warp-born power increases manifold, and whose wounds heal with incredible speed. But how to control such bloodthirsty monsters after the battle ends is a completely different question. The Helldrake is a winged demon engine of chaos that plummets out of the skies like a living comet, hurtling towards enemy aircraft and crashing claws first into them from above. Each Helldrake is a vicious predator, hell-forged deep within the warp, These monstrous creatures take cruel joy in diving down upon the unsuspecting air support of their enemies in order to shred them into pieces with his scything wings and rune-carved talons. Helldrakes were once noble fighter aircraft flown by Space Marine tech marine pilots, though they are now something much more hideous. The dark energies of the warp have granted them a form much better suited to the predatory role their twisted spirits savour. While all Helldrakes have sweeping wings and the powerful engines common to all Chaos fighter craft, the resemblance ends there, for their aspect is one of flying demonic reptiles or pterosaurs more than any ordinary aircraft. The miasma of wrongness that surrounds these fell creatures is due not only to their hideous hybridization, but also to the keening anguish of what remains of the individuals who used to be their pilots. The steersmen inside the Helldrakes, having become consumed by the power and independence granted to them by their fighter craft, have literally become one with their vehicles due to the power of the warp. At first the transformation is of the body. The corrupted heretic Astartes pilots shrink back into the interiors of their machines until they see with the craft's autosenses and speak with its vox grills. Eventually, as the machines themselves achieve demonic sentience, the transformation affects the pilot's very soul. After so many centuries swooping through the warp as pitiless hunters, the steersman's soul melds with that of their war engine until they are entirely subsumed. The pilot's physical form becomes an atrophied, fetal ball that burns deep in the core of the demon engine, where a natural beast would have a heart. Trapped and made subservient to the murderous desires of the demon with which they now share their prison, the withered, blackened pilots scream in the darkness, their trauma and rage magnified by the vox arrays of the Helldrake into haunting cries. Often, the first sign of a full-scale Chaos Space Marine invasion comes in the form of an attack by Helldrakes. These metallic monstrosities traverse the void between the worlds by clinging to the undersides of Chaos Space Marine attack ships, wings folded protectively around themselves in the manner of bats and their piston-driven claws clamped onto the fuselage above. Dark umbilical cables, sheathed in organic webbing, probe outwards from each Helldrake's body to burrow into the host void ship's outer surface, drawing away raw energy as a leech draws blood from its victim. When the Chaos warships arrive in low orbit, the Helldrakes detach themselves, unfurling their great wings as they plummet towards the atmosphere of the victim planet below. Some will soar through the skies as heralds of the destruction to come, retractable weapons pushing out from their gullets and spitting volleys of red-hot bullets that cut down the scrambling, earthbound defenders below. Others prefer to plunge through the clouds into the crucible of battle, screaming in savage joy as they crash headlong into the fight. Hunger, cruelty, rage. That is what drives the Helldrake known as the Abomination. No one knows which demonic entity commands it, for at the hour of its birth, the beast machine broke its bonds and slaughtered its warpsmith creators upon the very hour of its binding. In the centuries since its creation, the Abomination has become a nightmare creature, shrouded in horror stories, which has terrorized Imperial aircrews across numerous worlds. From hollow Cerberos to the acid veils of Nachtgast, Abomination has torn its victims from the skies with unrestrained savagery and drawn other Helldrakes in its wake. Helldrakes are ferocious demon engines flying into battle on enormous metallic wings. In their fury and appearance they resemble the great serpents exterminated by the Thousand Suns Legion when it first came into the warp and conquered the planet of sorcerers. Of all the demon engines, the sons of Magnus particularly treasure the Helldrakes, for in them they see a likeness of the fire-breathing Ouroboros, long a symbol of the servant of Tzeentch. While the Rubric Marines advance upon the enemy in tight ranks, terrifyingly swift Helldrakes soar over their heads. Every mighty sweep of their metallic claws knocks enemy fighters from the skies, tearing off control rudders and afterburner chambers, and the maimed machines fall to the ground like flaming meteors, exploding amidst allied troops. Following the debris, the Helldrakes dive, spewing from their gaping maws either a hail of bullets or streams of incinerating flame. Those who manage to survive the hail of gunfire run in superstitious terror, yet few are quick enough to escape the flying monster. Having torn their victims apart with claws, the Helldrakes ascend back into the air and rush to where they can cause destruction anew. Only the most enlightened among the Thousand Suns warriors know the harsh truth that the Helldrakes were once Legion fighter planes. Their pilots survived the rubric of Ahriman, but were consumed by their own aircraft. Many willingly accepted this transformation as a blessing from the Lord of Change, giving their souls to become a part of the majestic Helldrakes. The painful transformation of the fighter into a flying demon engine irreversibly drove the pilots mad. Predatory entities permeated every mechanism, twisting the machine's spirits and causing the Space Marines sitting at the controls to mutate, their genetically enhanced bodies becoming inseparable from the cockpits. Sensory organs merged with sensors, allowing Astartes to see, hear and smell only through an array of auspexes, and any damage suffered by these infernal dragons was felt as their own. Their minds were tormented by unimaginable entities of Tzeentch, changing the fighters as they pleased. In the end, only the rudimentary hearts remain inside each Helldrake, pumping not blood but malice and bitterness through the ethereal veins of the demon engine. Pounding forwards upon bladed limbs come the horrors known as venom crawlers. Grotesque amalgams of metal, flesh, and demonic entities, these monstrosities hiss and snarl as they scuttle towards their prey. Fleshy tongues flap from snarling maws and soul-flayer tendrils lash back and forth, all tasting the air for the scent of their enemy's fear. Upon locking onto their target, the venom crawlers emit an ear-splitting screech. Pent-up warp energy is channeled into their excruciator cannons, coalescing into hails of solid shot that rip through entire ranks of armoured foes with ease. Without pausing its fire for even a moment, the infernal machine advances towards the front line, intending to tear apart the hull of the first encountered enemy vehicle with its claws and eviscerate the crew. Soulflayer tendrils wildly lash out, maiming bodies and extracting from them their very essence, and in the process of carnage, the Venomthrope's fanged maw opens wider, drawing in the evaporating souls of the slain. Like other demon engines, venom crawlers are created by the warpsmiths of the Dark Mechanicum. Their spider-like frames are wrought in unhallowed forge halls and profane flesh factories. And through heretical ritual, parasitic entities are drawn forth from the warp to infest these horrifying machines. During such a ritual, the strongest demon presence is bound to the structure of the venom crawler in a state of inseparable symbiosis, while lesser entities are simply devoured. As more demons are absorbed, its metallic form distends hideously to accommodate them, creating a reservoir of empiric energy within its swollen body. Upon completion, venom crawlers continue to haunt the cavernous halls of the Creator's factories, burrowing into and nesting within the warp-drenched superstructures. From there they wait for the telltale scent of other demonic entities that have been drawn into real space by warpsmiths and masters of possession. Should these empiric beings somehow escape the binding rituals or burst from their hosts, the venom crawlers emerge to hunt them down, devouring them whole and storing the raging spirits within their bulbous bodies. It is this demonic energy that powers the venom crawler's formidable weaponry, and when such wayward entities are in short supply, the war machines will turn to other sources of sustenance, consuming demonkin, chaos sorcerers, or heretic Astartes to remain well-fed. However, venom crawlers are uniquely valued, both off and on the battlefield. Not only can their repositories of stored warp energy be siphoned in order to create fresh demon engines, but they can be used in the thick of combat to weaken the fabric of reality. Masters of Possession are particularly adept at drawing upon this reservoir to lure the demonic servants of the Chaos Gods into existence. At battle's end, these demons are hastily consumed by the venom crawler, their essences used to replenish its depleted warp stores. Demon engines, designated as Forge Fiend, were originally devised by Dark Mechanicum to sow death and destruction amongst enemy forces from afar. The Forge Fiend is roughly centauroid in form and stands on 4 powerful legs. The demonic beast's 2 arms are replaced with twin weapon mounts that carry hell-forged parodies of Imperial armaments. Most often, in place of the front limbs, Forge Fiends carry a pair of Hades autocannons, rotary guns that allows the Forge Fiend to scythe down masses of enemy troops and even lightly armoured vehicles with contemptuous ease. When a demon engine is forged in the citadels of the warp, part of the fire that burns there is transferred into the heart of the engine itself. It is this brimstone-scented furnace that powers the engine's mechanical motion, but also that provides the baleful energies it pours into the ranks of its foes. The weapons of the Forge Fiend do not fire regular ballistic projectiles, but instead spit out red-hot phosphor shells that are extruded from the twisting, convulsing cables that churn and writhe inside of its armored body. Hidden inner intestinal tracts feed steaming large-bore ammunition into each of the monster's autocannon chambers, each and every projectile bearing the taint of demonic flame. The Forge Fiend replenishes its ammunition supply by devouring metal just as easily as flesh, and a well-fed Forge Fiend can maintain a glowing salvo of shells for several minutes, before stopping to gorge-load some more raw materials into its interior feed hoppers. The pulsing energy of a Forge Fiend's warp-fire furnace is not always used to produce solid ammunition. Some mechanical beasts are equipped with ancient plasma weapons shielded by protective housings, so massive that they would seem more fitting for some type of light aircraft rather than a ground walker. These plasma weapon-equipped demon beasts have been nicknamed Cerberites by Imperial forces, as they usually contain no less than three, one mounted on each of their weapon arms and another located within their maw. These weapons were once prized artifacts that dated from the time before the outbreak of but have now been corrupted by the malevolent arcane knowledge of the gargoyle-mounted and drizzling with balefire. The searing energies that these devastating weapons hurl outwards are a hybrid of plasma and burning ectoplasm channeled straight from the Forge Fiend's tainted heart. The Forge Fiends of the Thousand Suns. Forge Fiends are filled with jealous contempt for the unbound demons of Tzeentch. Such demons exist to exert their will freely, to create change and flux by the outpouring of their own essence. Confined inside their mechanical exoskeleton, a Forge Fiend is greatly limited in the fulfillment of this existence. The Thousand Suns know that this is torture to these demons, and they use this torture to their advantage, for a Forge Fiend will allow the fires inside themselves to erupt whenever they get the chance, raining many-formed destruction upon whatever enemies are lured into their sights. Mauler Fiends. The demon engines known as Mauler Fiends thunder towards the foe like monstrous attack dogs loosed from the leash. Their eyes glow with balefire as ectoplasmic drool drizzles from their fanged maws. Their thick front limbs end in articulated claws powerful enough to tear a dreadnought limb from limb. Should they catch a squad of infantry, they will scissor them apart or crush them into paste with a flex of their massive talons. Also known as stalkers or scalers, Mauler Fiends have strength and agility enough to climb sheer surfaces. Nowhere is safe from these demon engines once they have the scent of their prey in their olfactory vents. If even a single Mauler Fiend makes it to the walls of an enemy emplacement, it will clamber across the vertical faces, tapping with its claw pincers until it finds a weak point before peeling open a large section and forcing its way inside. Because of their utility in siege warfare, Mauler Fiends are used extensively by the warpsmiths of the Iron Warriors. Even the most redoubtable Imperial strongholds will fall into deathly silence once a Mauler Fiend has breached the walls and set upon the fleshy bounty within. Some warpsmiths and chaos lords see their Mauler Fiends as a feudal king might see his fiercest warhounds and set them loose on heavily armoured targets with much the same sense of prideful satisfaction. When a Mauler Fiend has latched onto its quarry, its destruction is all but assured. The magma cutters that protrude from the Mauler Fiend's torso can focus the anger that burns inside it into a white-hot jet of flame that can melt through the thick rockcrete of a bastion wall. Many an Imperial Titan has been felled by a pair of Mauler Fiends clambering up its legs and shearing through its joints with pinpoint energy blasts and raking adamantine claws. Some Mauler Fiends serve their masters as demonic battering rams that barrel headlong through the enemy lines. They defend themselves from counterattacks with segmented tendrils that whip out from their midsections to crush and confound those who would attempt to stay their advance. These lashers gorge themselves on the hot flesh of their victims until their blunt muzzles drip with blood, even though they can take no sustenance from the flesh of mortals. Sorcerers often deploy Mauler Fiends, equipped with magma cutters, to destroy columns of enemy machines approaching the battlefield. With these tools, demons turn their fiery breath into a heat beam, capable at close range of burning through even the most durable ablative armor. It happens that the prognostications of the Thousand Sons show that they will face numerous infantry, and then they release Mauler-fiends with lashing tentacles which swiftly deliver fierce and disorderly strikes, leaving nothing of the enemies but crimson clouds of blood. Although these devices are forged from molten metal, sometimes they transform into spiky whips of ethereal matter, or mutate into biological appendages. Often, thrall covens carve mysterious runes on the Mauler-fiends, compelling demons to a particular kind of tasks. For example, in battles against the Necrons of the Nefrek dynasty, the Silver Suns created seals that endowed their Mauler-fiends with an irresistible desire to devour metal. Thus, the metallic beasts smashed through the enemy ranks and tore the metallic warriors apart. But when the Xenos began to self-repair, the warp energy flowing from the hungry demonic machines made the Xenos reassemble incorrectly into a clumsy and non-functional pile of parts. Defilers, massive warp-spawned demonic machines capable of easily crushing a space marine rhino and then tearing apart the squads inside or pummeling the positions of the Imperial Guardsmen with relentless bombardment. The forces of chaos have used such battle monsters for millennia to torment Imperial worlds across the galaxy. Defiler is one of the most horrifying sights on the battlefield. It possesses 6 legs, 2 of which end in metal claws of a size comparable to a human, within whose hydraulic grip often lies the destruction of the enemy's machines. In the center of the crab-like body of the Defiler, on a demonic torso, powerful weaponry is mounted. From the gaping maw protrudes a cannon, capable of firing large-caliber rounds over great distances and bringing destruction into the ranks of the enemy. Reaper autocannons possess fearsome firepower, while the twin-linked heavy flamers of the Defilers spew the flames of the warp, leaving nothing but unrecognizable charred corpses. Up close, Defilers are capable of tearing apart columns of armored vehicles with their mechanical claws, ripping through the sides of tanks on the move. Any infantry that by some miracle avoids the grasp of the soul-shredding monster will be torn to shreds by its crackling sharp blades and long whips. No crew guides the fury of the stomping Defiler. The war machine is fueled and led into battle by the otherworldly energy of a demon, which was imprisoned within it through a horrendous ritual. It would be an understatement to say that Defilers revel in bloody carnage. They revel in it. This nightmarish mix of machine and warp terror fights with sadistic pleasure, exterminating everything in its path. The thirst for violence, combined with destructive armaments, makes Defilers a terrifying sight for any true commander. Experienced generals know the havoc that these demon engines can wreak both in close and ranged combat, and therefore plan accordingly for such a storm of violence. Defilers are constructed in the Soul Forges, a huge sprawl of sulphurous worlds within the Eye of Terror. Within the Immateria, millions of the Dark Mechanicum's bleak forged citadels ring with the abominable industry of chaos. They are foul places. The warp-distressed spires of tainted foundries vanish up into skies choked with sorcerous smoke. The air on the ground is thick with garbled chanting, hideous pledges and foul incantations that would never be uttered by the sane. The stench of rank magics lingers in labyrinthine passageways, mingling with the charred odour from protein farms. The corrupted servitors who slave away for their masters never see any light, save that of the glow of magma or the spark of sorcery. Such places are forever spawning new creations of flesh and metal to be unleashed by the forces of chaos in order to bring terror to the galaxy. On these old worlds, hidden in twisted metal and bone citadels and tainted manufactoria, warpsmiths labour to create all manner of war engines. Their mechatendrils are forever whirring about them as they perform their forbidden art. And it is the Defiler that stands among the warpsmith's most revered and feared creations. Strictly speaking, the body of a Defiler is not manufactured from anything new, for the obscure processes of the warpsmiths reconstitute it from warp-tainted metal wrenched from other constructs. The Defiler's ancient slab-sided metal panels have been known to possess the runic signatures of ancient forge worlds that fell during the Horus heresy and of tech priests who had turned traitor. It is said by those within the Council of the Ordo Malleus that many such panels, as well as other elements of the Defiler's technology, are originated from dreadnoughts, perverted by the hands of chaos and distorted by the warp. During this process, the warpsmith may affix all manner of weaponry to the construct. As such, defilers have been seen crawling across the battlefield armed with havoc launchers, power scourges, power fists and huge twin-linked heavy flamers. But central to the war engine is the battle cannon, which delivers death to all corners of a battlefield. Much of the war engine's actual construction remains incomprehensible to Imperial scholars. The only true knowledge that exists of its construction is of the vile ritual performed to infuse the metal shell with a demon. Binding a warp horror to a defiler is a complex process. To summon a demon, or even a trapped soul, from deep within the immaterium requires a flesh sacrifice. Offerings can come in many forms, but for a sufficiently brutal defiler to be manufactured, a victim of profound might is necessary. It is a warrior of the Adeptus Astartes that a warpsmith most frequently demands is brought into his hellish foundry, for the ruinous powers value these offerings more highly than sacrifices of mere mortals. A prize of such strength is not easily won, and many followers of the Dark Gods will fall before a living space marine can be brought in captivity from the slaughter fields and into the dark heart of the soul forges. After a warpsmith has constructed the physical shell of the defiler, the barely breathing space marine, stripped of his power armor, is bound with runic chains to the war engine. In the red glow of magma furnaces and the fug of toxic fumes, the Space Marine's black carapace is violated by arcane weaponry, and his blood oozes across the chassis of the inert defiler. Base litanies are chanted, forbidden sorceries set free upon the victim. The loyalists' hearts are stopped according to the whims of the warpsmith. The death of the Space Marine heralds the birth of the defiler. The summoning of a demon is a precise art, but it is not unknown for a ritual to go disastrously wrong. A misplaced vowel within a litany can result not only in the instant death of the sacrifice, but of those around him. The infamous warpsmith Draxar once invited a particularly powerful demon into the Soul Forge on the demon world of Phenomia, but failed to speak the words of binding correctly. The summoned warp horror materialized within the flesh of its Space Marine offering and burst free from its sorcerous restraints. It then proceeded to slaughter Draxar as well as dozens of menials with the warpsmith's own power axe, before vanishing back into the immaterium. A warpsmith will know that his ritual is complete when the war engine rises from its dormant state and snags against its glowing chains like a primordial beast. The defiler's exhausts roar with defiance. The machine beast thirsts for slaughter, but the demon engine remains bound by its runic reins, kept captive to the warpsmith amidst the smoke of the forged citadels, waiting to be used in a dark bargain or in dark corners of chaos battleships. The defiler is never dormant. Chaos fiends continue to goad it, riling the demon within into a heightened state of fury, until finally it is time for the defiler to stampede into combat alongside the forces of chaos. Only then can it quench its thirst for carnage. No matter which warband or legion the defiler fights alongside, each demon engine becomes an integral part of that force. Irrespective of the different fighting styles of the various forces of chaos, the defiler is much sought after by chaos lords and sorcerers, and is found in significant numbers among the traitor ranks. Those who fight for Khorne's favour, such as the World Eaters, are ever keen to harvest more skulls for the blood god, and they frequently take advantage of the defiler's hideous bloodlust. The Iron Warriors fortify their dark frontiers with many demon engines, and among them are numerous defilers, always thirsting for the counterattack. The Death Guard, too, deploy defilers across the galaxy, each demon engine capable of quickly eliminating obstacles that deny the spread of Nurgle's maladies. Out of a curious respect for the warp horror within a war engine, the traitor legions and warbands may choose to issue defilers with a name. Sometimes this is based upon the demon who inhabits the machine, or some archaic ritual within the ranks of chaos. But more commonly, it is a base declaration of what the demon engine does. In other instances, an Astra Militarum regiment who faced the defiler's onslaught will have given it a designation. Inquisitorial records detail atrocities conducted by defilers throughout the ages, which are attributed to an eclectic array of names, including the Alpha Legion's Hellpincer, the Purge's Rot Crusher, and the infamous Red Corsair's Engine of Mail. The first Defilers were created as a result of a pact between the Dark Mechanicum and Abaddon the Despoiler before his first Black Crusade. It is said that as part of Abaddon's preparations, he quested to find an array of war engines to bring the Imperium to its knees. He desired constructs that had never before walked across a battlefield. Abaddon's need for new and horrific machines brought him to Zana II, which lay deep within the Eye of Terror. There, the Magi of the Dark Mechanicum pledged their allegiance to Abaddon's cause in exchange for rare artifacts, blood offerings, and menials. As the Despoiler dismissed his dark servants out into real space to fulfill their requests, the renegades of the Dark Mechanicum forged new creations within their citadels. Some of the oldest Defilers became legends within the slaughter fields of Abaddon's first Black Crusade. Though the Black Legion marched to war alongside countless demonic war machines, few inspired as much terror as the scuttling packs of Defilers. In 781 M31, the people of Earthwart were to experience the full force of this new horror. Interpreters of the Emperor's Tarot foretold of a new iron monster that would come from the heavens. Soon a Chaos fleet entered into orbit, blackening the skies with their Baroque ships. Numerous Cadian chimeras rolled out across the landscape, carrying troops to reinforce important positions and defend key cities. A contingent of the Imperial Fist's 4th and 5th Companies made planetfall shortly before the Chaos Warfleet's arrival to help prevent the planet's demise. The armies of Earthwort were at the mercy of an assault from a Black Legion warband that sought to bring nothing but mayhem to the world. Defilers churned up the waves of advancing infantry with withering gunfire, decimating bunkers and gun emplacements. Their far-reaching shells pulverized the reinforcements before they could get into the thick of the action. Whenever the forces of the Imperium fought back, and a stalemate seemed to be reached on the battlefield, it was the uncanny speed and terrifying ferocity of the Defilers that broke the deadlock. The frenzied demon machines would surge forwards with an unnatural thunder, peeling open the metal hulls of tanks and even dueling dreadnoughts in jaw-dropping clashes. After 4 solar days of combat, it took the full force of the Imperial Fist's 4th and 5th Companies to hold back the warband on Earthwort and force a retreat back to the orbiting ships. Eventually the Chaos Fleet vanished back into the Eye of Terror, but the legend of the Defiler had been forged in battle. Abaddon the Despoiler was so impressed with the demon engine's devastating desire for blood and slaughter, and the amount of carnage that they could cause with relatively little support, that he demanded more be constructed within the Soul Forges. As the various traitor manufactoria hammered out even more Defilers, the demon engines became aligned with different warbands and legions, not only Abaddon's traitor force. New pacts were forged in the darkness. The arcane knowledge of the demon engine soon spread throughout the Soul Forges, and warpsmiths within thousands of dark citadels learnt of the debased arts of creating a Defiler. By the early 32nd millennium, the Defiler had become a mainstay of the forces of the Chaos Space Marines. Warbands used them to lay waste to Imperial fortifications in lightning-fast raids. Legions who fought to destroy the hated Adeptus Astartes fielded the Defiler in some of the most protracted and violent conflicts since the Horus Heresy. One of the earliest of these atrocities involved a warband of the Word-Bearers. A host of traitor warriors assaulted an Imperial fleet as it brought military aid into Segmentum Tempestus against Abaddon's second Black Crusade. Though the Word-Bearers had formed no specific allegiance with the Despoiler at the time, they nevertheless routed the fleet. After their own battleships destroyed Imperial vessels, the Word-Bearers boarded 5 cruisers, unleashing Defilers on each of them. The demon engines ripped through the passageways, crushed the crew members or torched them as they tried to flee. Ultimately, the Defilers made quick work of the ship's inhabitants. Before they disembarked to the Chaos vessels, the Word-Bearers sent the ships spiraling back into the rest of the Imperial fleet, and the void of space filled with explosions. In the ranks of bands and legions fought countless Defilers, but some of the demon engines earned an infamous reputation, and their villainies are well documented. Over millennia, these defilers made their way into the Imperial archives. In the populated hive world of Nukon 6, the engine of plague became the great enabler for the Death Guard to spread the putrid diseases of Nurgle. The world remained heavily defended by a robust planetary defense force and Acadian regiment, but the engine of plague, along with 4 other defilers, tore apart tanks and gutted soldiers in key positions, gradually grinding down the Imperial forces. The engine of plague and its cohort eventually attracted the attention of the bulk of the planet's forces, wallowing in slaughter while their traitor masters infiltrated behind enemy lines. Within days, the filth of Nurgle had spread to over 100 billion people on Nukon 6. Mikala the Insane was considered by Imperial scholars to be one of the most ferocious defilers ever created. In the year 899 of the 34th millennium, it was at the forefront of a savage attempt to destroy the Blood Tiger's Space Marine chapter's fortress spire on the jungle moon of Trigon II. A warband fleet belonging to the Tormented erupted out of the warp in a rapid deployment. 20 defilers were among the spearhead on the ground, including Mikala the Insane. The demon engine burned great swathes through the forest, so that the Tormented could bring their war to the foot of the fortress monastery's outer walls. While the Blood Tigers were forced to focus their efforts on the horror below, Helldrakes tormented the structure further up the fortress spire. Gunfire raged through the skies while great gouts of blood and flame soaked the humid jungle down below. Only one foe from the warp managed to breach the armoured walls, and that was Mikala the Insane. The defiler wreaked havoc inside the fortress monastery, crushing whole squads of Blood Tigers. Dreadnoughts finally reduced the demon engine to smouldering wreckage, but not before it had caused significant damage. Only after Mikala's fall did the forces of the Tormented finally retreat into the Immaterium, and the Blood Tigers were left to count their dead. Ghostcrusher became legend due to the horrific deeds enacted on craft-world Ilamanesh. In 326 M33, a huge warband of the Night Lords descended from the darkness of the warp on a mission of revenge. Their aim was simply to eradicate the world's spirit stones, many of which had previously been stolen from the crone world of Asil Sar. While delivering justice for this past elder sin, the Night Lords unleashed several defilers. One of these, Ghostcrusher, stood out as a particularly savage machine beast. The demon engine spearheaded a Night Lord's assault upon the shrine of Eldanesh, incinerating ancient tomes, crushing sacred totems, destroying spirit stones, and burning the guardians who attempted to prevent the desecration. So thorough were the Night Lords in their assault on Ilamanesh that they left the craft world a tomb, with no artifacts and no living Eldari remaining. A debaser is a defiler perverted to the dark prince of pleasure Slanesh by the Emperor's Children Traitor Legion. It is armed with a devastating payload of sonic weaponry, including ultrasonic disruptors, a death whaler and blastmasters, as well as razor-sharp battle claws. Dedicated by the Death Guard Traitor Legion to the service of the Plague Lord Nurgle, the perverse version of the Defilers, known as Desecrator, is armed with a vomit cannon, Reaper autocannons, and battle claws. Created by the followers of the God of Change, the Deceiver, it is armed with Tzeentch cannons, ether cannons and heavy flamers, as well as battle claws and warp flames which are used in close assault. The Berserker Champion of Chaos, Akragar of the World Eater's Traitor Legion, was the first to harness the Defilers and bind it to his fierce will. The first recorded instance of this reckless tactic came during the War for Eclipsion Prime, when the Skull Champion, Akragar of the World Eaters, jumped from the ruins of a hive spire onto the eponymous defiler known as Slaughterfiend, and managed to subdue the demonic machine to his own will and hence ride it like a monstrous steed. Ever since, berserkers have attempted to emulate Akragar's actions and carve rune-etched links about the throat of the infernal vehicle, binding it to the will and rage of Khorne. Competition to ride such beasts is fierce, and though many try, very few succeed. In battle, whole units of berserkers will attempt to clamber onto a nearby Slaughterfiend, if only to steal a ride into the fray. If the berserker safely survives the defiler's attempts to throw him off, he will wrap the engraved runic bonds around the demonic being's throat, suppressing it with his will. From that moment, the Defiler begins to transform into a slaughter fiend, a maddened alloy of demon machine infused with the fury of Khorne himself. In battle, the slaughter fiends charge forward with earth-splitting steps. Champions atop their hulls cry out praises to the blood god. The nearest berserkers also climb onto the body of the slaughter fiend, driving their chain axes into its metallic skin to get to the enemy even faster. When the slaughter fiends reach the enemy, they fall into a frenzy of violence. Their lords take care of themselves with chainswords and axes, while the berserkers of Khorne leap into the midst of the enemy ranks, full of a passionate desire to kill in the name of their god. The first of these demon engines were created by warpsmiths on the command of Abaddon the Despoiler to support his Black Crusades, and news of their creation quickly spread among the traitor legions and war bands of betrayers. Whole wars began over the possession of the dark knowledge needed for their creation. However, Mortarion did not need to resort to such desperate measures. He simply demanded the necessary hex-mechanical scrolls from Abaddon, and the War Master, seeing no reason to quarrel with one of the demonic primarchs, gave them over without objection. The offspring of Nurgle, for some reason, earlier than the servants of the other dark gods, adapt to bondage. Perhaps it is due to their morose submission, or maybe in the jubilant realization of the destruction their new shell is capable of causing. Either way, the creations of the Lord of Decay are far more amenable to residing within the Defiler. Once trapped in the machine, the demons immediately infect it, changing it in accordance with the vision of the Plague God. Metal rusts, lubricant thickens and flows. Shining slime oozes from the joints, and the armor plates are covered with pustules and boils. The defilers of the Death Guard are invariably enveloped by the foul smell of rotten meat, dung, and indescribable emanations, as well as a halo of greasy flies. The Death Guard maintain numerous manufactorums for the production of demon engines, including the Defilers. From the Black Mansion to the Afflicted Stars, warpsmiths and the Dark Mechanicum fill their creations with pernicious energies, while cultists sing in the factories day and night. After the opening of the Great Rift, such rituals became much easier to perform, allowing the Death Guard to assemble vast hordes of defilers at a frightening speed. When the defilers of the Thousand Suns march across the battlefield, the very earth quakes and cries out under the oppression of the demonic energy radiating from their spider-like bodies. Every heavy movement of their many-jointed limbs sends waves of distortion, filling the minds of all who see the mechanical beast with unbearable horror. From the chest of a defiler projects a cannon, firing explosive shells that can tear a tank apart with a precise shot. In each of them, just as inside the machine itself, resides a diabolical offspring of Tzeentch. When the warhead explodes, the released lesser demons warp reality in the impact zone, sending shrapnel, stone fragments and bones flying in all directions. However, these entities are forever chained to their prison, and therefore they are reincarnated in the body of the Defiler, becoming a new shell waiting for its targets. The defilers used by the Thousand Suns are creations of Tzeentch, and thus are more prone to changing appearances and methods of killing. Nevertheless, even in the case of controlling a Tzeentchian demon engine, extremely hazardous rituals are required to remove and replace parts of the defilers, usually performed by large cabals of ascending sorcerers. Few survive, for during the process, the particle of the demon residing in the weapon is drawn out and stored in the minds of the sorcerers. And if one falters, the dismembered warp spawn will consume the consciousness of all. But if they can maintain their sanity over the course of hours, days, or even weeks, then the empty weapon will fall away from the machine's body. Only then can a new weapon, inscribed with runes of the imprisoned entity's true name, be installed on the mutating metallic chassis, and the demonic shard returned to the renewed cage. Exalted sorcerers from many sects of the Legion highly prize the destructive power of the Defilers, and often receive visions where they burn worlds, if at least a handful of demon engines join their calls. Driven by prophecies, the Black Magi devise intricate plans of deceit and influence, causing warpsmiths from other legions to bind demons and machines in the most dangerous combination. Ambition is the greatest weakness of the hell-forged metallurgists, which the exalted sorcerers exploit, making them believe that by performing an act of pagan creation, they are fulfilling a divine will. When the sacrilegious labor is completed, the thousand suns come to claim its fruits. As for the Creator himself, he will be slaughtered, burned or fed as the first offering to his own demon engine. Before the rites are carried out, it is bound to a new master. In the formless wastelands of the realm of chaos, there exists a place perpetually shrouded in clouds of thick black smoke, filled with the acrid stench of metallurgical industry, complemented by the cacophony of sharp screeching and the wailing of countless tormented souls. This damned place is known as the Forge of Souls. Here, in the Cyclopean forges, blind, constantly mutating chaos, demon artisans tirelessly hammer away. The roaring black flames of these laboratories are maintained with the help of semi-sentient, ghastly creatures, giant mechs, and through the sacrifice of countless damned souls. From the dark depths of the Forge of Souls emerge all manner of unholy weapons and war machines of chaos. With the use of perverse technologies employed by the Masters of Chaos, demonic energies are fused with bewitched metals, creating great serrated blades, weeping swords, spiked metal whips, and other mighty items and talismans that will be wielded in their eternal wars by demons. However deadly they may be, this weaponry is but toys compared to the greatest creations of the demonic smiths, the formidable soul grinders, which, according to myths, were created precisely in this purgatory. These terrifying creations are a blend of the most powerful demonic entities and war machines, created beyond the immaterial realm of the warp, but already having felt the touch of chaos. Usually these are the shattered remains of demon engines and possessed machinery, such as the mighty war titans of the Legio Mortis, or rampaging defilers crafted by the Traitor Legion masterminds. All these remnants, through the Eye of Terror, the Maelstrom and other warp storms, sooner or later find themselves in the warp. On the ashen plains around the Soul Forge, an endless battle rages because many among the higher demonic echelons vie and fight each other for the right to merge with one of these mechanical constructs and become a soul grinder. Indeed, unlike a regular possessed body, such steel and ceramite bodies can allow a demon to reside in the world of mortals for decades or even centuries. During this time, the outline of each soul grinder will change as their metallic bodies gradually take on a form similar to that of the demon inhabiting them. But such a magnificent armored body comes at a price. For these unholy transformations, the craftsmen of the forge invariably demand a price for each new soul grinder. It can range from a negligible handful of slain mortals to innumerable thousands of souls, but the payment will never be the same for two different demons. Before it is released, a demon must reveal its true name to the forge and give its masters 3 oaths of the Iron Pact. Firstly, all souls collected by the gargantuan blades of the soul grinder will be used to fuel the flames in the forge. Secondly, the remnants of all war machines destroyed by the adamantine claws of the soul grinder are to be delivered to the forge. And finally, perhaps most importantly, if one of the Chaos Gods attempts to seize and attacks the soul forge, all soul grinders will defend it, casting aside any oaths of allegiance to one of the 4 great elements of chaos. When the Dark Pact is sealed, the demon's essence is fused into a warp metal body and reborn as a soul grinder. If the soul grinder manages to harvest the agreed amount of mortal souls, the demon inside gains freedom from its mechanical prison. However, this debt is not easily settled. As the demon cuts and kills, forging a bloody path through the galaxy, the required price unpredictably grows, sometimes becoming forever unattainable. If the soul grinder perishes before the full debt is paid, the demon is offered a new body, but at a much steeper price. Thus begins a vicious cycle that dooms the demon to the same eternal curse as the souls of those it has slain. In battle, armored soul grinders always lead the demonic hosts, using their impressive firepower to unleash it upon enemy positions, covering the advance of the Dark God's infantry. The demonic nature of the soul grinders allows them to appear suddenly out of thin air, and their ceramite body, animated and protected by the supernatural energies of the Immaterium, makes them invulnerable to handheld weapons and the shots of most anti-tank guns. Inexorably advancing on the enemy, Soul Grinders unleash torrential fire from their large caliber and rapid-firing weapons, recreated by the artisans of chaos in the likeness of ancient mortal armaments, but they are not the most powerful weapon in the Soul Grinder arsenal. Its smouldering maw is capable of blasting enemies with terrifying charges of warp energy. These attacks can take various forms, equally deadly and unnatural for mortal warriors to comprehend. Sometimes, Soul Grinders may unleash large clumps of warp fire. In other instances, their tongue-like appendages may lash at enemies like searing energy beams. Occasionally, they may spit out vast amounts of frothing mutagenic ichor, incinerating entire enemy units at a time. In close combat, Soul Grinders are unstoppable. Metallic monstrosities armed with piston-powered claws and sorcery-charged demonic weapons. Brutal strength and unrestrained violence of their attacks are so terrifying that very few warriors have a chance to resist or even maintain their positions against an advancing Soul Grinder. Rivaling in size even some of the greater demons, these iron-clad hellish spawn are nearly unstoppable, huge metallic beasts with multiple arms, equipped with hydraulic claws and demonic weapons. Even battle tanks and the chitinous monsters of mortal races are easily tossed aside by the Soul Grinder, crushed and torn to pieces. Decimator is a chaos demon engine created from a horrific amalgam of human and Xenos technology fused together and brought to unholy life by the darkest warp sorcery. The use of the Decimator demon engine was first recorded in Imperial records as far back as the latter part of the 35th millennium, during the mass genocides known as the Grief of Herodin. The Decimator is rarely encountered outside of the chaos cults and demonic fleets that roam the benighted reaches of the Nightmare Rifts far to the galactic south in the Segmentum Tempestus. It is here in the dark void beyond the Imperium's borders that some unknown source, it is believed, barters these dread-killing machines for a high price in blood, plunder and souls. During the Perun Cross incident, a massive alien space station captured by the Night Reaper's renegade space marines, Minotaurs and Grey Knights came face to face with several such mechanical monsters. It remains unclear how the renegades managed to acquire so many of these enigmatic machines created with perverted techno-sorcery, but it is well known that decimators were widely used in the Lana Rifts, a region of space shrouded in darkness which harbours many secrets. Various rumours and snippets of information related to the creation of new decimators have led some members of the Ordo Malleus to speculate that the infamous Dark Magos, known as the Septral cult, which legend has it was driven to the rifts beyond the Silent Abyss during the Great Scouring, had a hand in creating these mechanical monstrosities. Meanwhile, other inquisitors claim that such a cult never existed, except perhaps in the feverish myths of the Forgotten Age. Decimators, representing an unholy fusion of demon and machine, are practically indestructible and often recover from what seem to be critical damages when the enemy walks by thinking they have dealt with the monster. Being animated instruments of war which in many cases have existed for millennia, decimators acknowledge no master other than the Phantom of Destruction. Some among them are taken from one battle to another by the powerful warbands of the Chaos Space Marine Lords used as siege engines, while others simply appear on the blood-soaked fields of battle, summoned from the ephemeral depths of the warp, to burn everything around them and to kill indiscriminately. The Decimator has a wide arsenal of weapons, among which, for example, are the rapid-fire butcher cannons, multiple-barrel storm lasers, and a mid-sized mortar with explosive projectiles called the Soul Furnace. In addition to this previously unknown weaponry, the Decimator is also equipped with a heavy conversion beamer, a rare ancient model weapon, almost never seen in the hands of the Chaos Space Marines. The most commonly encountered type of weaponry is the Siege Claw, which is usually used in pairs with another. This is an extremely sharp close combat weapon, incorporating an unknown form of flamethrower. A long time ago, several well-known scientists in the service of the Ordo Xenos claimed that the Siege Claw of the Decimator bears resemblance to some of the blades used by the Goltite Xenos assassin Cerators. This has led some inquisitors to the assumption that the dark Magos of the Septrile cult, if this horrible brotherhood is indeed responsible for the Decimator, have gained access to a range of Xenos technologies and are using long-forbidden hybridization rituals to create weapons that have no right to exist in a rational universe. Research has shown that the Decimator's assault laser shares characteristics with the crystalline projectors of the Dracolith Xenos. This theory is entirely based on analysis after combat reports. It is also believed that the explosive projectiles of the Soul Furnace use energy containment technology similar to that utilized by the armies of the Lumineth Realm Lords, although this legal theory is almost impossible to prove. Spireborn are monstrous, but fortunately rare warp engines, constructed and used by the hegemony of the Archons. Usually made from scrap metal or excess, they are powered by a captured demonic entity, just like the notorious Forge Fiend. Spireborn come in various forms and models, depending on the whims of their creators. They vary from the skeleton of a humanoid to an armored golem and a wolf-like creature. In a state of rest or inactivity, Spireborn are suspended on specially manufactured gallows, which serve as blasphemous altars, where through secretive processes, real space is thinned to such an extent that the immaterium can pierce through the etheric fields. Spireborn can be summoned or activated with the use of glyphs, intelligent runes imbued with sinister power, which, as said, float and flicker in the air like glowing wings. The purpose and operating principle of these glyphs are hardly understandable, but it is claimed that they are used for demarcation of occupied territories and borderlines, as well as warning about disorders or law violations to the enslaved populations. After activation, wirewolves, as known, become wild and nearly uncontrollable, attacking any nearby target regardless of its affiliation. These monsters quickly exhaust their charge, which visually usually resembles a coronal discharge or ball lightning, and are forced to return to the gallows to recharge their energy. However, an awakened and fully powered werewolf is a frenzied and almost unstoppable enemy. If it receives enough damage, its metallic frame bursts open, furiously releasing the contained power. This deadly explosion can completely annihilate everything within a certain radius. Hellstalker, the loyal metallic steeds of a Lord Discordant, crushing enemies caught in their path with blade-like limbs. Once close enough, Hellstalker leaps at the nearest enemy machine and embeds its massive front limbs into it, piercing the ablative armor and latching onto the turret. Some of these infernal constructs open the steel hide of their held victim with magma cutters, while others use armor-piercing syringes to directly inject trash code and demon infophages into the electronic circuits. The Discordant hears the machine's pain and feels how it tries to reconfigure the work of vital systems and maintain integrity. Hellstalker, in turn, revels in these sufferings like a parasite, devouring the driving force, be it a machine spirit or another esoteric info-mind residing in Xenos technology. When its shell swells with the absorbed code and sub-programs, cracks in it begin to close, emitting warp energy. Meanwhile, the Lord Discordants extract the tormented spirit of the dying machine. Their mechadendrites absorb spasmodic surges of electricity and distort informational signatures. Then, this stolen power can be used to repair friendly infernal constructs, or released as a screaming beam capable of infecting the systems of another enemy technology. I will tell you even more about the demon engines of chaos in the next episode, so like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it.